Order now. We're getting started just a little late, which is okay. I'll start by mentioning a few meeting logistics. Everybody? One of the first items of meeting logistics is we do not have amplification in the room. So we will all need to make sure to speak up as we're speaking and make sure that only one person is speaking at a time. If anyone is joining remotely, I would ask you to change your name display to be your first and last name. When you speak, please start by stating your name and where you live. We ask you to keep your comments or questions under 3 minutes. And if you're speaking about a specific agenda, well, that's not really relevant here. Anyone who wishes to speak must be called on by the mayor. Once you're called on, you may make a statement or ask questions, but this is not an opportunity for dialogue between the public and the council. And if you speak out of turn, discuss non-germane topics, or go on too long, you may be interrupted and asked to adjust your comments or behavior. First item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. I assume that there are no requested changes to the agenda, so we could proceed considering the agenda is approved. Next, general business and appearances. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to address the council on any topic that is not on tonight's agenda. And because tonight is a workshop to develop our strategic priorities, we will not be taking public comment during the workshop discussion. So any comments anyone might have about what you think our priorities should be should also come up in this general business and appearances section. And so I'll open the floor now. Comments in general business and appearances will be limited to 5 minutes. And you can come up here to the table where everyone's setting them back.
Just so that the Zoom people can hear me or get it on the recording.
It is being recorded. I've done it.
A repeated issue is agenda specificity. It's unfair to the public to have to try upstairs, find an empty room. I don't know if there's a note there saying they moved it downstairs. It didn't give Orca sufficient notice to get set up. It's a recurring theme that we've talked about again and again, that our agendas miss the day of the week, mismatch the day of the week with the date, and even the location has to be specific. Some of you may be aware that a public records request was made for the party planning for Bill's, bash this at the end of the week. It's entirely erroneous in the case law that the manager, who should not be hearing an appeal of his own party planning records, is relying on a UVM case, Right to Know Inc. versus UVM, which was not university records, but a prior university employee reviewing trade journals for peer review before they got published. That is not on point to this issue. This is city computers, city staff time, city electricity, city internet being used during business hours to plan a party. And that is, it's up to this council to have the integrity to say, no, the lawyer got it wrong, or the lawyer's covering Fraser's ass, and that is not allowed. You need to release those records. There were no copies. The city has no copies of the alleged notice to the campers that they ran out of Hubbard Park. I've made repeated requests for where's the notice that has the time, the date, the space, an identification, who was served if known. It's not okay to have a policy, an encampment policy, and then violate it repeatedly. The policy also requires safe storage of the property that's removed. In this case, Parks Department admitting we're putting it in a locked container up at Country Club Load that has a leaky roof. That's not safe storage. So y'all ought to be ashamed of yourself for overlooking this stuff. You got the challenges and the opportunities of trying to write a plan that's going to have to be implemented by a different city manager. Unfortunately, we'll still have status quo in the interim until a new city manager is found. But that's a real challenge to write a plan without knowing who's going to have to implement it. There was a video emailed to the city regarding the removal of the encampments and the personal property being dumped in the parking lot behind Christ Church. It came via email. It could easily have been forwarded out via email. And Fraser's playing a game saying, oh no, it was encrypted. We unencrypted it. Now it's too big. You got to go to the police department. Similarly, requested the thumb drive be put at the city clerk's office. Refused. You got to go to the police department. You got to go look at the records regarding the VHB contract, which is overdue for the due diligence. It's not reasonable these are not police records I'm asking for. It's not reasonable to require somebody to go to the police department to view those. John thought it was because there's a camera to show receipt. There's a camera in John's office. So this is just blatant obstruction of public records access, which should not be tolerated. And it's up to the council to speak up about that, not rely on the obstructionist staff. Regarding tonight's topics, I would ask you really focus on the homeless emergency, the number of people that are being ejected from the hotels in 10 days or so. We have done, Jack, we've got less restrooms than we did before the flood, and we've done nothing to implement restrooms. And that's yet in the farce of a city plan is, oh, that's the city manager's job. It's not the city manager's job. The city manager has proved himself incompetent of doing that, and that y'all need to take responsibility for getting restrooms for the tourists as well as the unhoused, and designated places where it is okay to camp. You can't just keep whack-a-mole and displace these folks over and over again. It's cruel, it's irresponsible, it's reckless indifference. So public restrooms, allowable camping with safety provisions. Sidewalk obstructions, these certain merchants keep putting their sandwich boards right in the middle of the walkway where old people in walkers and carriages and people, even Zach Hughes tries to drive down the sidewalk across the bridge, and the Woodbelly pizza sign is blocking the sidewalk sufficient to keep his wheelchair from crossing. Mr. Sergeant, who's come in and spoken to you, his wheel of his little motorized wheelchair gets caught in the railroad on the sidewalk on the railroad track right by Shaw's. Thank you, Steve. Yeah. I wish you'd do something about this stuff instead of just, nodding all the time.
Well, as you know, the city manager does track and follow up on the items that you bring to us, including the item that you brought to us about the accumulation of debris at the city center building, which did not disclose a piece of dangerous rebar sticking out. Next up,
I'll get the state agency to inform you.
is there anyone else in the room who would like to be recognized? Is there anyone joining us online who'd like to be recognized? All right, we'll move to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Is there a second?
Great.
Seconded by.
No, I'm not seconding it. I have a question. Great. I don't see an attachment up for the payroll and warrant approval.
Uh-huh.
No, so
No,
we-
Can't hear you.
so it's a standard item, it's typically with break notes and, hard copy, to the meeting, and so we don't have those here, so.
But as to speak up.
Thanks, Cameron. We do not have, the payroll over items.
Is there a second?
So I wanna move
We
this.
can't hear you.
I am using
Those
the,
speakers, those mics don't affect the room. You're gonna have to talk first.
okay, I've tried to show really like, I don't know, I'm trying to do my best. Thank you. I tried to move this agenda, the workshop agenda. So I just wanna make sure that when I say so moved, I was trying to approve. And if it is not the same thing you were asking, then yeah,
The consent agenda,
okay.
which is on the agenda at every meeting.
So, Mr. Mayor, so we don't have the items associated with that, so I would just probably suggest that we might just, pass that item.
Okay, we'll pass that item. All right. Now we're up to strategic plan workshop. And we're turning it over to you, Kelly.
Great, thanks everybody for being here. I'm gonna try my best to project, but this is a workshop. And so it's really for conversation purposes, and so can everybody, around the table hear me? Okay, great. Just checking in. Thank you. So in front of you and over on the table is a packet with an agenda overview of what we plan to cover tonight. And so what I'm hoping for is that we can do this work within 2 hours. And if not, then we will schedule another session. So we'll get as far as we can tonight, but I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to work through this plan with you and sort of next steps. And so just going over the agenda itself, you can kind of see it laid out in this table here. And oh, I actually also want to thank Palin and Adrian for helping me construct this agenda because it was really good to get some feedback before coming into the session. And so just getting into it. So right now, just starting off here. So Evelyn's going to kind of start the clock and keep the time for us. I want to go over just sort of some key assumptions associated with the existing strategic plan, just to kind of get your guidance on that and how we'd like to treat that item. I'd like to talk about the objective of this meeting, take a look at the ground rules, and then also just get a sense from each of the counselors in a sentence, what their expectations are for this meeting. And so it might be that you agree with the objective statement, which is fine, and you could just say so. Or if there's something else that you're wanting to get from this workshop, then we can kind of put it out on the table and just make sure everybody has the chance to participate in that. So just moving on down the line here, and just sort of putting on the table just the current strategic plan. So my assumption or staff's assumption is that we are shelving the existing strategic plan and replacing it with this work product once we're finished for the next year. And I just want to make sure that we're all clear about that, so that there's no expectation that we're going to continue. I mean, we will work on the projects that are associated in that plan, but that we're really kind of setting the stage for this. I also want to just note within the existing strategic plan, at the beginning of the document are the vision, mission, value statement. And so we might want to consider that going forward as part of this plan or not. But I just want to mention it so that that's something to consider, just to provide clarity on as we get underway here. And I'm not going to get into it right now because I really want to kind of get into the meat of the plan itself. So just kind of level setting what the methodology was around this development. You all got a survey, which was constructed based on the city plan, the draft city plan that we're working on, which likely, hopefully soon will be our city plan. And so the universe of topics or priorities was contained therein. And so you each did select priorities. And so we'll go over those results in a minute here. So that's really sort of the basis for starting this work. And then also is sort of the basis for some of the other pieces that are around the room here. And so you'll see some swim lane charts up here that we're going to go through in a little bit, but they are reflective of what the priorities were within the survey that you filled out. And so those are our assumptions right now. If we want to change them or modify them in any way, now's the time to do it. So just putting that out there. So just, referring back to the timeline. So right now we're sort of in this welcome and purpose statement. We're gonna get into sort of the survey results and take a look at sort of plan definition items, just to make sure we're really clear on what the different hierarchy is within the plan as we move forward. And then just get clarity and consensus around a few items. And then from there, we're gonna do a individual brainstorming session around sort of the strategies associated with the goals. That may change if we want to take a closer look at the goals themselves. But hopefully, based on the survey results, we're able to kind of identify those out the gate here. If not, we'll work through it. And then from there, we'll work on taking those strategies and putting them up on the board in the timelines here. And then we'll discuss sort of the matrix on, how we're going to get some of these things done and making sure that they're pretty specific. And then, a future goal, once we do hand sort of this product over to council, I'm hoping that maybe at the next council meeting or the one after, we'll have a plan developed for you to approve. Then we'll have sort of the next steps to have the associated department and individual group that will be responsible for those goals. So just making sure that we're really kind of calling that out specifically. So just moving on to the objective, like this is the important piece. So I just want to underscore this. So for tonight, we're looking to build consensus on top strategic priorities and define measurable goals and milestones for the next 12 months. And so it's a pretty clear statement. Hopefully, you've maybe thought about that a little bit in terms of just thinking about the city plan and what that looks like and what you want your priorities to be. I will say, and I'm sure you saw when you took a look at the survey results, it was pretty clear, where your priorities were. But we can talk about that in a minute here. So the next thing I want to do, and Evelyn's going to scribe a little bit, I've got a poster up there for ground rules. So just making sure everybody's on the same page on how this is going to go. So we've identified some ground rules, trying not to make it too complicated so we can take anything off the list if you'd like, or we can add items to the list. So I'm just going to go through them one at a time. And as I go through them, Evelyn's going to put them up on the board. If I see anybody saying like, I'm not down with that, then we'll take it off. So just getting into it. The first one is one speaker at a time. So just with the sound and everything, we're just going to make sure we're accommodating that. Try to stay on topic as best we can. We've got sort of a real priority workshop here. And so we're trying to get through a lot in a short period of time. We're going to try to stay time aware. So Evelyn is running the clock for us. And so we're going to make sure that we do that. And we'd like to respect all ideas. So just making sure that, anything, can be put on the table at any time, just to kind of talk through things. We need to assume positive intent. I'm really thankful that everybody's here at the table today. And I think it's going to be great to kind of work through this plan and then work through the plan in the next year. Be present and fully participate. No side conversations, because they're a little distracting. So we can just kind of all stay in the moment. If something is unclear, just say so. So if there's something that doesn't seem quite right, let's sort it. There's another timeliness thing here. This is more a reminder, I think, for me to just start in on time, because we'll just keep going if not. So decision making, we'll hopefully decide by consensus. Yes.
I have a problem with that one.
Okay.
We don't use consensus as our decision-making process in any other situation. So I'm not really comfortable with having it here now.
Okay.
I think it would be fine if somebody doesn't agree on some piece of what we did and we can still move on. But to demand that everybody agree on every single thing is just going to bog us down, I think.
That's totally fair. Do you think that it's not a majority?
Yeah, like we always do.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Commitment to decisions. So, if we're working through the plan, and we decide that this is the plan, this is the plan. So action oriented, just making sure that we can kind of boil everything down to really clear steps and with owners and deadlines, so that then as we move forward, we're really clear about what we're doing and how we're going to do it. And then this one is a fan favorite. I know the staff liked this one when they took a look at this, and this is actually, Adrian's kind of chuckling a little bit because it's from the state days, but Elmo, so enough, let's move on. So if anybody says that, we'll know what it means. So we can start using that one. So just, put that in your back pocket. So that's what we've got here for just draft ground rules that we, put up to kind of, think about as we're moving forward. Is there anything else anyone would like to add? I'm going to take that as we're good to go. Okay, perfect. So just I'm going to jump ahead under housekeeping items. So we will have a sort of probably put one of these posters up for just parking lot items, things that we want to just hold for a future discussion, but maybe aren't part of this discussion. And also one that is for next steps. So, if there are next steps associated with this plan that we need to take, that we're just kind of identifying them and moving on, just so we can be pretty efficient. So there's that. So then this is the last piece as part of the section. I would be interested in hearing from all of you, what your expectation is of this particular workshop. And so just to, the objective that we stated was tonight, we're going to build consensus on top strategies and priorities and define measurable goals and milestones for the next 12 months. So I would just ask the group, what does this mean to you? Is this good? Like, is this what we should be doing? I mean, if we generally were good, or if anybody else wanted to add something, or,
I have like one thing, just maybe it's just sufficient for me to say it, but like that, tonight we'll build consensus on top strategic priorities and define measurable goals and milestones for the next 12 months. What I'm kind of looking for from this process is just like clarity around roles and responsibilities and what we as a council are going to do. And so like when I look at the framework on the second page, on page 3, that breaks it down by aspirations, goals, and strategies, that is actually like much clearer to me because when I read that sentence again, I'm like, where are the actions, right? There's strategic priorities, there's measurable goals, there's milestones, there's timelines, but like, I want to see, and maybe it's just semantics, but like, I really want clarity around what are the action items that the council is going to consider in the next 12 months. And again, I think the framework does a nice job of breaking that out.
I think the session objective is very good. Objective is very good. I should have said something in the ground rules, so I'll just mention this now. Last year, we did a whole session, long session on council strategic plan. And then later in the year, we heard members of the council say, well, sure, I voted for this just to be done, but it's not really what I planned on doing or what I believed in. So I want to encourage people not to vote for something just to be done. That it would be great if we can get everything unanimous as we did last time, but I would like people to come out of this with something that we're all committed to. Yeah.
Just want to add one more thing. The document we will create after this workshop will be public document too. So I would suggest we should create a template easy to understand. So anybody from our community, when they look at the document, they will understand what we want to do, what actions we want to take as a city council and city in 12 months. So easy to understand, plain language, and easy to follow. I'm talking about the document we will produce after this workshop. Thanks.
great. So I think then maybe what we'll do is we will move ahead to the next piece of this. So, to sort of the next phase. And so this next part is about 20 minutes in duration. And so what we're looking to do here is sort of do a recap of the survey results, look at sort of plan definition items that Ben just referenced, just making sure that we're really clear on what the different phases are, or tiers or, hierarchy. And then from there, there are a few items that I just want to get clarity and consensus on. So the consensus piece, I think, is just taking a look at, what we've got up here in terms of, in these swim lane boards, these are the things that were pulled forward as part of the survey results. And so I want to make sure that these are good. So, and I can get up there and kind of, talk through each of them as we work through that. But then also in infrastructure, really, I put infrastructure above the utilities and facilities goal that was selected, just to kind of really be clear about what that is. Because I think that, while the utilities and facilities is, really indicative of the infrastructure goals that the city has, it might not cover everything. And so one of the things that's not really in there that's really important would be the paving steady state plan. And so some suggestions around how we might work or angle that, and that, we might be topic specific. So it might be specific on the utilities themselves. So whether it's stormwater, water, district heat, we might want to, consider how we work with the infrastructure goal. So it's really clear and we're getting after what the goals are, using the city plan as a frame of reference, of course, but, just making sure that we're really clear on that. So that's kind of where we are. Before we get into the survey results, which you all have a copy of, and I believe there are a few copies at the front, and if not, we can make more. I just wanted to go over the framework of the plan. I know when we've looked at past plans, there maybe hasn't been as much or enough clarity around the different phases or tiers of that plan. And so in looking at this, just kind of going over, what the intention here is that we've got some of the what we selected as part of the city plan, that overarching aspiration or visionary item would be something like, associated with housing or economic development or infrastructure. And then getting into the goals, they're more specific components that, would maybe characterize the aspirations, but also are, doing something or clearly defining, what the intention is with that particular priority. And then from there, the strategies are intended to be very specific steps. So, plans, projects, permits, policies, action items that are very specific and measurable. And so just thinking in those terms as we, move through this conversation. And so we've got sort of the overarching, visionary item, and then we've got sort of the goals underneath. So using housing as an example, we've got housing and then increase the number of homes in Montpelier by a minimum of 75 units per year. That's the goal. And then what are the strategies to do that? So what I'm hoping for is that then we'll be able to pick the strategies for that specific goal and then bucket them within each of the time periods indicated. And so we're going to go through an exercise that does that, and hopefully, we'll get to the end of the evening or this 2-hour block and have identified some strategies on how we're going to get there and agree to them. So, that's the intent. And so any questions around sort of the framework or hierarchy of the plan? Super. Okay. Well, then let's move on to the survey results. So you can see within the survey packet, it's pretty clear where we ended up, and that's why we did sort of develop the swim lane exercise out with these specific priorities in mind. So everyone selected housing as a priority. So it's pretty clear. And then 5 of the 7 of you also selected utilities and facilities and economic development. And so if we are to select, 3 priorities, it seems pretty clear to me what we would select based on these survey results. Is that the general consensus or general, thought of this group? Is there anything else that you would want to add? So just be thinking about that, I think.
Yeah, I just want to make a case for resilience. I was one of the people who put resilience down, and that I don't think we can do any of the rest of this if we don't address the threat that we have from flooding and other things like that. So it kind of ties everything together. So maybe it's just something we keep in mind as we're working through this. That's part of the strategy of economic development, is making sure that businesses aren't put out of business a month from now when the rainstorm comes.
Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll just actually say like, I didn't put down resilience because I felt like, I think actually the commission is doing a lot of work in that area that will involve the council. But I feel in a similar kind of way that like, if we don't address the housing, if we don't address economic development issues, we won't be a resilient community. And, I think a lot of this, obviously they're all interrelated, right? But I just wanted to just make that point that it's not that resiliency isn't important. It's critically important. It'll be woven into those other things. But I also think like we do have a group that I think is working pretty hard on it. And, we'll be coming to the council with opportunities for action. But I think there's other areas that would benefit from council focus. For what it's worth.
Select resilience, the same reasons Ben mentioned, but we're still going to pay attention to every other item. We're just trying to set a priority for more urgent action, I think, in the coming year. So I guess we agree on that. Good.
So,
In terms of selecting key priorities, maybe, what we might consider doing is that, maybe under the sort of the goal, there may be a goal associated with, resiliency in either of these topics, or not, but that might be a path forward. So I guess what I'm kind of looking for in terms of just reviewing the results, is this how we want to proceed? Do we want to select these 3 items? Okay, great. So I'm just going to keep moving through, and actually I know that work is not going to really like this, but I am going to move around a little bit just because we're going to need to move, I think, here. But what I'd like to do is just go over what the goals are that are associated with each of these priorities, so that then we can kind of get a sense of what's up here. And so also I will note that in the survey itself, you can kind of see the results associated. And in some instances, it's very, very clear where the priorities are within the goals. In some instances, it's not as clear. There are a few here and there. But if you look towards the back of the document and the appendices, you can see, all of the items sort of spelled out there, and they are reflective of the goals that are within the strategic plan. If you wanted to get a look at those goals, you could take a look at the city plan, which is up on the walls here. And so that might help once we take a look at strategies as well. And then before I go over each of the goals here to see where we're at, I also want to note some of the other resources that you have in the room. So all the department heads are here. So if you have any questions, we're here. And then, there is in your packet just the existing or the old strategic plan now, I guess, but there might be some items that you want to pull from there. And I just want to highlight section 1.2 and section 1.3, which is specific to capital investment. And so there are some, I think, key indicators and potentially strategy 1.1, just because it does deal with resiliency and some of the infrastructure and some of the repairs that we're doing. But more to the point of, just kind of looking at water line replacement, looking at paving schedules and the like, those goals we might want to chunk up in, annual increments. That might be helpful. Also, with you've got a project summary of what we're currently working on coming out of FY25. I hope to get you a little bit more of a robust list in terms of timeline and who's working on what and what the dollars are associated with these projects, but gives you sort of a rough sense, and they may be specific items that you might add in to, a strategy and sort of an effort to achieve a goal. That all makes sense? Okay, great. So I'm gonna get up here and that's the show host thing. So I'm just gonna start with housing on here because this one was the most clear, so I think that will probably, hopefully gain, approval pretty quickly on this one, so. Yeah.
Are you picking her up at all, or should we maybe just carry a microphone around?
Okay, great. So I'm gonna keep going. So for housing, the key goals were. Good, okay. The key goals were to increase the number of homes in Montpelier by a minimum of 75 units per year, to maintain a mix of housing type, sizes, occupancies, and costs, to increase support for homeowners, developers, and nonprofit partners in creation of the housing. This one's cut off a little bit because I, just was trying to keep it to a sheet of paper. So if you look in the appendix of your survey results, all of these items are in there. And then the last was to maintain the city's commitment to affirmatively furthering fair and accessible housing by focusing on the areas where needed. And so you can kind of, track through to see what those look like. Any questions on those? Good? Okay. So I'm just going to keep moving along just so that we can keep moving because we don't have a lot of time tonight. So for infrastructure and utilities, this is one where I need a little bit of clarity from the group in terms of how we want to define this one. If we look at the city plan is, really visionary in this topic and also may not be as specific with our plans associated with capital planning. And so I'm just going to do sort of broad strokes with these particular items. And there's kind of a lot of them actually. And so we might want to break it down, and we might want to break it down by utility item. And so just starting off here, this first one is to maintain the quality and quantity of water, including water supply, treatment plant, and next one is Green Mountain Power to ensure its commitments to be net. Next is to maintain the responsible administration of water fund and increase funding to water fund to achieve steady state maintenance. The next, quality and quantity of stormwater treatment through a variety of methods. The next is to maintain the responsible administration of customers and operations sufficient to achieve long-term solvency. These are to meet current and future demands. The next is to continue to participate in Central Vermont Solid Waste District Management, aid that organization in planning programs that extend the life of the current landfill through diversion and plan for any future landfill expansions. And this one I added in here because I think it's important, but is associated with paving and just to meet the steady state plan. So we might, something to consider for clarity is we might just be specific to the facility. So we might, talk sewer, water, district heat, paving, just keep it really simple and the goals that we want to achieve in each of those utilities. And so that's what I might propose. That's something to think about as we move forward. And also you could, might get some ideas from the current or, former plan. But we can also work on some goals and metrics that you would like to see. So I'm going to move beyond, but just a little bit of clarity on just how we want to structure this one so it's meaningful. And then this next one, economic development. So just moving down the line here, just back to anybody. Increase the quality and quantity of affordable housing and childcare as they are essential to a thriving and a successful workforce. I'm realizing with some of these, they're missing the F's in the word. And so I think it's just thing with the software, but anyway, just so you're aware that's up there like that. The next one is Montpelier will maintain a robust local economy by supporting a quality private development and by ensuring those projects have access to ample infrastructure. The next is to increase the number of local businesses through retention and expansion programs, as well as support for startups and entrepreneurship with the goals of increasing, and that one's cut off a little bit, but you can kind of see what it is in your packet. And then just moving on from that, Montpelier will be a great place for people in the workforce to live because we provide them equal access to employment through available housing. And then the next is continue to improve our business and economic climate to encourage and support businesses. And then the last is to increase the number of local businesses through retention expansion programs, as well as support for startups and entrepreneurship. And so, we might, you might want to select a couple of those, 3 to 5, or you might want to do them all. It's just so in terms of clarity and how we want to move forward. I feel like, Carrie. Yes, they did, and they're all goals within the.
Are any of them reworded in any way? I'm not necessarily seeing them. Maybe I'm just overlooking something.
I don't believe so. I tried to cross-reference. But it is a little tricky if you don't have the specific one highlighted. But I'm happy to indicate which ones are on the board.
Like supporting quality private development.
Let me just check to see. I'm gonna put my mic down. He's looking at the board right now for us. Let's confirm.
What was the wording on that one?
So this first one,
The second one.
Montpelier will maintain a robust local economy by supporting quality private development and ensuring the projects have access to ample infrastructure.
That's the second aspiration.
Second aspiration, okay.
Yeah, the first aspiration is Montpelier will be a great place for people in the workforce to live, much longer one. So economic development had two aspirations. One aspiration looked at the workforce, the workers, emphasizing that side of the equation, and the other one looked at the businesses. So you can always look at economic development as the workers or the employees or the employers. So that's what it was looking at, was we want to be good to both sides. So those were the two aspirations. The rest of those would be the goals that help to implement that one of those aspirations.
But actually, I mean, if yeah, that's fair.
And what about the other Montpelier will be a great place for? I mean, I agree with you saying.
Oh,
It's
for
just
sure.
that, we didn't select these. The city council didn't select them.
And that's, yes, we can remove.
Well, we can put them on now. It's fine. Just want to be clear.
Yeah, no, I mean, and happy to clarify that, and putting these up on the board the way that they are, I can just clarify for everybody that has the hard copy of the survey in the appendix in the back, what's bolded at the top of each group for the items that have more than one. For instance, under economic development, we just noticed that it inadvertently, we missed the aspirations for that category. So it does exist. It's just not reflected in the hard copy. And so I think even just with this one, just to be.
Yeah.
So I think if the group would like, what we can do is so if these are, our intention is to align with the city plan. And so in terms of the aspiration, like we could make sure that that is up here and not within the goals. And just to make sure that we're in alignment.
That seems like a good idea.
Yeah, we can totally do that. No problem.
But other ones do not have the same, right?
No, I don't believe so. Not that might have just been my error in trying to pick these up quickly. So I will adjust them, but maybe the group while I'm adjusting could kind of talk through the other two items. Would that make sense? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Awesome, great. Have at it.
So, does anyone have any
Thoughts about any of these topic areas? I suggest we take one topic area and work on it for a while. Yes,
Maybe into 4 subgroups, and each group can like brainstorm action items or strategies, so then we can share with the rest of the group. Or do you want us to go each goal individually, like individual person?
well, I didn't design this, but I think at this point, it might be good to have the discussion among the whole group. So everyone has the benefit of what people, all the people in the group are saying.
Yeah, can I ask a clarifying question, just like what is actually going up on the board here? So that if we have housing, we have the broad aspiration that's outlined in the city plan, which I don't have in front of me, but it's, everybody has access to safe and affordable housing. And then we have this series of goals on the left-hand side, which are things like increase the number of homes in Montpelier by a minimum of 75 units a year, right? And so is what we're doing right now saying, yeah, these are the right goals, or are we saying in the first 3 months, these are the strategies we're going to do to achieve the first goal, the second goal, the third goal? Do you know what I mean? Like, what are we writing on this timeline?
Collecting the goal, but just to make sure that the goal is clear, and then in the timeline would be the strategies to achieve that goal.
The actions that we
Yeah,
would take to
and
achieve
so
that goal.
In terms of the sequencing, you know, if we can select the goals associated with each of these priorities, then we can work through the strategies.
Right, okay.
So we're not using all of these goals.
No, so
How many are we gonna, do we have a target number for what we want to get down to?
probably 3 to 5
Oh.
would be ideal. And so we can, and actually this is what I was wondering, what this might happen, is just thinking about, like, you know, are we good with these goals? You know what I mean? I think we might be able to take housing and see if everybody's good with those goals. Maybe not, maybe we want to talk through each of them. And so then I would shift the exercise. I would propose shifting the exercise to then, as Palin was suggesting, maybe work on prioritizing 3 to 5 goals. I just put these up here based on kind of what was on the survey to give us a starting point, not because they're what we should do per se. So totally up to you. It's your plan. So I'm happy to, you know, help facilitate either way.
Well, why don't we start looking at housing? There's only 4 goals up there. Do people think these are the right goals and we should be working towards all of the, and they're of equal importance and they all should be up there? Palin.
Thing is, these are coming from the survey, which is the majority of us want to see these goals up there.
So
So
now,
there's no need to discuss again, because I think majority of our group picked those ones.
Well, and not the very, but these are the only 4 that got any votes at all. So I think we're all in agreement that we like those 4. So the question is, do we want to keep 4? Or do we only have only 3? Give her some.
No, because the survey was saying pick 3,
Oh, I don't. Oh,
Yeah,
well,
up
yeah.
to 3, so you can choose 1 or 2 of them or all of them.
So you think we should have only 3 goals under housing?
If you're asking my personal opinion,
Yeah.
4 of them are good. Because,
That's what I think. too.
yeah,
So,
so, yeah.
So it kind of sounds like we're good on housing then, maybe? For the goals? Yeah,
Can we get goals one more time?
yeah, absolutely. So, to increase the number of homes in Montpelier by a minimum of 75 units per year. Maintain a mix of housing types, sizes, occupancies, and costs. Increase support from homeowners, developers, and nonprofit partners in creation of housing. And then to maintain the city's commitment to affirmatively furthering fair and accessible housing by focusing in areas where needed.
Jim.
I don't know why we need numbers, because fine if we took 75 out, we say, let's increase the number of homes, and why do we need a minimum or a maximum? Just the goal is to increase homes as much as we can to a certain point. We know we're not gonna get 800, but I don't know, I don't know why we need a minimum. Because we don't make it, then what does that say? We didn't push hard enough or something, or?
Yeah. I think that is what it says, you know, I actually, like I remember at the planning commission meeting around the city plan, there was a lot of discussion about the numbers and the goals, and are they aggressive enough? And, you know, I look at a place like Rutland, where I think the mayor has set a goal of 1,000 units in 5 years or something like that, and they've already permitted up to 250. you know, that there's I think a number adds a sense of urgency and accountability.
I think that's there anyway,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. And
My concern will be if we change something here, we need to change it in the city plan too, right? Because these are coming from the city plan. And probably there is some kind of rationale behind it.
City plan, gonna be until last 30 years. And what we're talking about here is what are we gonna do, hope to accomplish in 1 year?
Whatever goal we are picking should be the same one in the city plan, then we can measure it easier. That's all I'm saying. If it says 75 units in the city plan, our goal for a year should be the same thing because it's the units per year.
I agree with that.
So-
I would like it to align with the city plan, use the same language.
So are we happy with that number one goal? 75 units a year?
Yeah, I do want to acknowledge Jim, what you're saying, because we're not going to have 75 units of housing done this year, right? Like, so I do think it's important that it align with the city plan goals. And I do think we should have the number in there and be aggressive and go for it. But, you know, I think we should just acknowledge the obvious of where we are right now. It's going to be difficult to achieve.
I'm okay to change in the city plan too. So that's all I wanna see.
So,
Well, the city plan is an 8-year or 10-year plan, and so you can average out at the end of that period, the number of houses that you built. If we're focused on 12 months, the number is going to be 0 is my guess, or a handful at the most, but we can also average it out. So we can, for this particular goal, we can increase the time period, I think. I mean, it just, a year, 75 houses in 1 year just doesn't
right.
make sense today.
Yeah.
It might make sense once we have everything in place and we're breaking ground, then we can say, okay, what are we actually gonna do? So we either reduce the number for this year or we extend the time period for the 75 houses. I don't know what makes the most sense. Where does that number, thought I'd figured it out. Where does it come from, Mike, the 75?
It's been a number that kind of came out of the planning commission process. So we had been averaging about 14 units a year from 2010 to 2020. And so we had talked about trying to double that to 30 units. And it was felt that that really wasn't setting the expectations high enough. And so it was kind of an arbitrary number to pick the 75. But looking at it over the 8 years, it would generate whatever it was 600 units in that time frame.
Yeah.
And so that's really what they're looking at. It could just as easily have been, say, increase the number of houses by a minimum of 600 units over 8 years.
So if you look at something like Sabins or Country Club, in 4 to 6 years, if all goes as planned, as we hope, we would meet this. I
Yeah,
think.
it may be 12, 14, 50, 110.
Exactly, yeah.
So,
yeah.
First of all, I wanna point out, we don't have a full.
Yeah.
We're already starting 3 months late, so. And we're gonna do this every year, so we're doing this year by year. I don't think we should look beyond the year. We know that there's the city plan, I mean, the plan looks beyond the year, but we're looking at the year we're in, because next year there may be new council who have different priorities, so. It's a start of every year, you're back to square one, so we're at 9 months. That's what, and remember, we may set 75 as a goal for us, but when the people hear this, they think it's the goal we're gonna reach. And, you know, if we don't reach it, they're gonna look at like, what, you said 75, that's why I'm a little concerned about a number. I've been through this before. When you set numbers and you don't make it, you hear about it. They're like, what's wrong with you guys? I mean, you set a number, you didn't pull it off. So that's why I'm a little uncomfortable with numbers. That's just my experience speaking, because I've seen this in the past. And being 3 months late, I don't want us to, you know, people to be geez, we're failing again, because, you know, you take surveys sometimes out there of how the council's doing, and like Bill Doyle used to take surveys of the legislature, and they always were failing. So I don't wanna set us up for looking like we're failing. I want us to push hard, but when we set a number and we don't even have a full year, we're gonna have people that are saying, who are gonna try to hold us to that. So that's my concern, that's my experience. That's all. I think we're gonna push as hard as we can. I don't have a problem with that. We're all aligned on housing. So let's just push.
So I hear you, Jim. That's why I was thinking, should we remove that goal as our priority? Then we will have 3 more and we can talk about those.
Well, let me tell you what I think, when I think about this timeline here, because that's part of it. If we want to have the goal, which for now, I don't think is just 1 year, even though this is 1 year's plan. But if we want to develop 75 housing units per year, then each of these time increments is some things that we can do to move us to that goal. And I don't think sitting here now that we're gonna develop 75 units in this year. On the other hand, if we had set this goal 3 months ago, that wouldn't have made a difference. We wouldn't have developed 75 units if we were talking about 12 months instead of 9 months. But we should be looking at what are the steps that we can take to get us to that goal.
Well, should we not have 9 to 12 months up there? I mean, because that's, again, we're not doing a year. We're doing 9 months, and we've got 9 to 12 months up there, and we're gonna be into the next council in 3 months. And
But I mean, so we can establish what the clarity is on that, whether or not you wanted to, I mean.
I'd like it to go 0 to 9 months, what we got.
Yeah, so let me just, an alternative for that, so in terms of right now, as we're constructing this plan, what is nice about this being a year plan is that it would maybe theoretically start at the beginning of the fiscal year. You know, so we would have sort of the full 26, just something to consider, or not.
Well, that's, you know, again, if you go by the fiscal year and you got different council members, then you're telling them, you gotta go by a plan that was set by a council that, you know, is relevant, that you're new on it. That's why I think we should go by the council year. That's how we did it in the past. We did it right off. Remember how, like I said, we did it if the first meeting, if everybody was back the same, the second meeting, if there was new, but you were setting it up for the council that was there that year, because every year the council generally changes. So you start anew, because if you don't start anew, you're telling the new councilor, well, you're just going by whoever place you took, they're speaking for you.
So, you know, maybe that's something that the council could consider. We, you know, had changed the strategic planning timeline to align with the fiscal year. It's not, I mean, it's not a perfect system, because as you sort of indicated, if you get a new council, then, you know, their priorities might not be the same.
The reason why I said that is this is council priorities, and you're setting it up for, you know, fiscal year priorities.
Do we want to just do it for 9 months? You know, sort of when the new council is seated, that's when we do the priorities.
That's what I'd like.
The months is a duration. We're talking about an action that may start now and take 9 to 12 months, not that it would start 9 months from now. In that case, I would say keep it and maybe extend it to 24 months, because we're going to come up with actions that we can't accomplish tomorrow, we can't accomplish in 6 months, or maybe even 12 months, but we need to start them now. So I mean, Elmo on this issue, and just leave them. And if we find that there are things on the 9 to 12 month sheet, Jim, that don't make sense at the end, we can take them off. But there may be things we decide to start now that are gonna take 12 months or more, and we want to put them up there. And we want to know that they're in the long range stuff.
What you're speaking to is actions, and I'm fine with that.
Well, that's
I'm,
what those are for.
I'm speaking to goals.
I'm gonna ask people, I'm gonna ask for a vote. Do people want to reconfigure this to 9 months or stick with the 9 to 12 month, to the 12-month structure that's been presented to us? Let's have a show of hands for voting for keeping it with the 12 months that we're at now. Okay, let's move on. Thank you.
Can we continue the conversation about the goals?
Yes.
Just like, I mean, I'm, trying to think this through in real time, right? But like, when I actually look at these, they're not anything, none of them are really going to be achieved, right? Like, they're all long-term goals because they came from the city plan that it's like an 8-year time horizon to achieve the goal.
Adrian.
Is to start breaking it down into those actionable
Right.
tasks.
Yes.
So we have this very big city plan, which is big, ambitious. Yay, that's great.
Yep.
But how are we going to do it?
Yes.
And so this is allowing us to look in these like very defined amount of times to say, this is what we want to try to achieve, or this is what we're working towards,
Yeah.
so that we give direction to city staff so they have an idea of what the priorities are, what they should be working on. And so we're just breaking it down from that 30,000 foot to like a 10,000 foot action plan.
So are you, like, when you look at what do you think about the 75 units? Like, is that's a goal over an 8-year time horizon?
Yeah.
And like, what we should be talking about is months 0 through 3, 3 through 6, 6 through 9. What are the action steps to help us achieve that goal over the long term?
Yes.
Okay.
Because we have to
Yes.
work on it. And so instead of saying this big, broad, what do they call, like this big ambitious goal of 75 per year and over 8 years, that's big. Like, yeah, that's great. Let's do that. But the goal of this exercise is how are we going to do it? To break it down to very tangible, like, steps.
Yeah, I think that's really smart, and I really appreciate you putting it that way. The problem with calling it a goal and putting it here, right, is it does kind of look like we're saying we're going to achieve all these things in this year, but we're not going to achieve these things. We're not trying to achieve these things. These are long-term goals that we're going to move. So we're going to decide what we're going to do this year. Move us towards that. Not promising. 75 homes this year.
So to me, we are already working these goals. Like since April, we had how many public hearings for the city plan? We listened to presentation of Saban pasture, right? And our department is working with them with the zoning. So we are already having action items. We are already working. So if we go back and check all the meeting minutes, probably we will find very specific action items for 0 to 3 months. So we will just like complete this, and my understanding is just the exercise. Then we can go back and check. And I think this is 0 to 12 months is the first year of the total 8 year. So I think we can think like that. So we have this city plan for 8 years, and we are talking about first year of the 8 years.
Yeah, I don't know if you want us to jump in. Just to put a potential way of looking at this. In the department project summaries under the planning and development, if we're talking about what would be in these different categories. So we've got Country Club Road development. That's a strategy that's in the plan. And that's broken down into different pieces. Coordinate infrastructure design, that's going on right now. So that's 0 to 3 months. Growth center designation, 0 to 3 months. Tax increment financing, 6 to 9 months. Grant applications, that's an open process. So whenever they're there are a number of grants we're exploring. Developer RFP process 9 to 12 months. City plan completion 0 to 3 months. Housing need assessment, that's 0 to 3 months. Zoning ordinance update, there's 0 to 3 months for the interim and 9 to 12 for the long. Those are all the steps we're taking. None of them are technically building any housing, but they're all setting the stage for something to come that's not going to come unless we do these steps now. So I think if you want to look at it that way, you may find things within the staff work plan that you might be able to plug into these different ones to say, well, this is how we're going to start to reach that.
And I think this is a good opportunity, as you all know, my mind work the gaps. So if we look at the current state, what we're currently doing, right? We have a path, there is a plan through the plan department, it's laid out in terms of, what Mike just said. Are there opportunities above and beyond that to, are there other opportunities that we might not be thinking of that the council could really hone in on, work with the housing committee to accelerate that plan? There may or may not be, but I'm just saying, like, for discussion, like, this is what we're doing. So we have the departmental project summary of what is currently happening in each department. This is what we're working towards. Is there anything else we think as a council we should be doing that we could add to this in terms of our task list that can just accelerate these goals that we could support above and beyond, what the city staff is doing? We could work with committees. Like, what else could we be doing to enhance these projects?
Sounds like most people on the council agree that the things that Mike laid out for us are things that we can populate in this timeline because those are rationally directed to this big goal of developing housing. And so rather than spending a lot of time doing that, I can think of a couple of other things right off the top of my head, which in the 0 to 6 month range, including talking to potential developers, talk to property owners in the city to see what they would need to develop housing or to put housing in locations where they have where they have property. Work with the state to look at what possible uses are for the federal building property. Those are all things that can go here in this first 6 months or so.
Yes, what I'd like to do is brainstorm those strategies and kind of put them off to the side and then place them together within the timelines associated with each of those goals. So once we've established that, the goals are what we're working on, then we can do the exercise, if that seems reasonable. So I think, and we can take them one at a time, or we can take them all together. So maybe housing seems like it's, good in terms of these goals, just to kind of keep us moving along.
One thought I have about housing is the bottom goal, maintain our commitment to affirmatively further fair housing. That seems like something that we just do with every element of housing that we work on, rather than something that we're pursuing separately. But I don't know what other people feel about that.
I agree with that. I mean, we're maintaining what we're already doing, and so it's part of the fabric of our organization. And so I would vote to remove that and have those three and then have those action items. I feel like there's very clear action items, like what Jack said, like, let's talk to some developers. We've talked to Central Vermont Medical Center, and they're like, these are all strategies that we could do above and beyond to support this goal. And I think those three are really good that we can really hone in on to meet our overall goal of increasing our housing.
Economic development, because Great, thank you very much for pointing this out. We have things a little bit jumbled. So so there are 3 here as well that have been indicated. And so maybe perhaps we might consider those. And see if they make sense.
This one?
Yeah. This one here, so let's see. I've got them all for you. So, the first one is to increase the, quantity and quality. Yeah, sure. So this first one is to increase and this one's actually associated with housing as well. It's the quantity and quality of affordable housing and childcare as they are to a thriving and successful workforce. The next one is to increase the number of local businesses through retention and expansion programs, as well as support for startups and entrepreneurship with the goal of an increase. Yes. And then the next one, continue to improve or support businesses. And so if these all seem good, then we could potentially move on to the strategy section. So we'd have we have 2 priorities, and then we have the goals associated with those 2 priorities at this point. Does that seem reasonable for folks? And so then just taking it back over here to infrastructure, so this one is where we really needed a little bit of clarity in terms of what we were trying to do here. And so this one we might consider, there are maybe using the utilities as items. I also want to, just sort of take stock and, Appellant had said around just really making sure we're in alignment with the language within the city plan, because I think that that's really important with that from a couple.
One of the first things I saw was that of these top 3, 1 and 3 really go together and could be,
Yeah, I can't do it.
okay.
So, let me read them to you. Hold on here. So the first one is to maintain the quality and quantity of water treatment plant and storage system. And then the one that Jack was referencing to say that they kind of go together is to maintain to the water fund to achieve steady state maintenance. So we might be able to actually take these 2 statements and actually apply that to, say, sewer and district heat and paving. And then you would have a very clear kind of set of objectives there that would be associated with those particular utilities, and they would be specific to infrastructure. I mean, the other things that I did sort of include up here because they were in the survey, and they're kind of maybe one-offs is maybe not the right way, but I did include them just because I think that they've been important to the council in the past. So, power to ensure it zero by 2030. The next one was about stormwater. Ensure facilities are sufficient and meet current and future needs. And then the next one was participation with Central Vermont Solid Waste Management District and planning with that organization and programs just around the landfill. And that was a steady state that we could potentially sort of make sure it's in alignment with goals with water sewer. Paving, or it would be associated with water sewer, so those 50-year plans. And so we already have kind of the underpinning to talk about those things. And so that a future agenda item might we review those plans and then, work through action items associated with those plans, and maybe there's more investments or whatever you would want to do.
Jim and then Adrian.
Can you say the one about Green Mountain Power again?
Entities continue to monitor Mountain Power to ensure it meets its commitments to be net zero by 2030.
Do we have a contract with them on that?
I don't know that we do.
So, so how are we going to ensure if they don't want to do it? Are we gonna pressure them some way? I mean, what is our hammer there?
Yeah, I mean,
If we have a contract with them, I can understand, and they break the contract, they pay some penalty, but how are we going to ensure that they do that? And if they don't, what's our hammer?
I don't know that we really have one, Jim, but I think in terms of the sort of net zero 2030 goals, that's why I wanted to put that up here, but it's something we should talk about if we're trying to achieve net zero goals. And Mike, I don't know, I'm not to put you on the spot, but you might maybe have a little bit more insight in terms of how that was developed.
Yeah, so the energy plans are based on, carbon emissions are usually broken into thermal, transportation, and electricity generation. And because Green Mountain Power themselves has already committed to being net zero in their electricity production by 2030, MEAC basically put that on the back burner to go through and say, we're not going to be working as hard on our electricity goals because there's no sense conserving electricity if it's all green anyway. So let's focus our money and our energy on thermal and transportation, but we're making an assumption Green Mountain Power is meeting their goal. So in the utilities and facilities plan, it simply says, let's keep track of it and let's make sure they're still keeping their commitment, because if they're not going to meet their commitment, then we as the energy committee need to sit back down and reevaluate our plan, because our plan is assuming the electricity is going to be clean.
It's a lower level of activity for us to be doing. I would pull that out. And the same thing with the solid waste management district. I would pull that out. That we're gonna continue to participate in the solid waste management district, but I don't see that as something that we need to spend a lot of city council energy working on. Adrian, I know we kind of got past what you were going to say, so I hope it's still in your head.
Good. I think this was one of the more difficult sections for me, because when I was reading the city plan, it didn't have in there what I wanted. So I was like, oh no, like this is a little bit of a problem. So I was really looking, and I found it in our old strategic plan. What we hear from the community, we got an email about this, about the paving, and just how do we increase that goal of our, back in 2013, we adopted a steady state plan for $1.2 million a year for paving. So my interest in this section was to really laser in, focus on that goal, see how we can fund that more aggressively instead of 3 years, or 4 years, I think it currently is. How do we, accelerate that down to 2 years so we could bring in some additional funds? And I think that could be a strategy. We can have goals for that. I didn't see that in our city plan. And so when I was filling this out, I don't even know if I answered anything, because that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to focus our energy on, because I think we're going to do everything else, right? It's part of the plan. It's what we're doing, but where do we want to spend our time and energy, and what do we want to advocate for? That is the line item that I personally feel
Thank you.
very important. So
I'll second that.
Improving pavement quality, it should be one of our highest priorities within this field. Is that a fair statement? Great. I know that's what we hear from our residents about. All right, good.
So on that same vein, I think in terms of our steady state plans with water infrastructure and sewer infrastructure, we probably might consider. I don't know if that's the sort of the direction of the group. So we've got the master plans for water and sewer, and so we might consider putting sort of a steady state, goal up there that's associated with those two utilities. And then I would also suggest doing the same for district heat. Okay, great. So there's also stormwater up there. Do you want to do a similar thing for stormwater? Okay. Great. And then the only other thing that's up here, kind of we'll retool these a little bit to make sure that they're in alignment with the city plan. But also make sure that they're specific enough to then sort of really key off of our steady state plans. So the other piece here is to ensure that facilities are sufficient to meet current and future needs. So whether or not we want to take that up, so one of the things that might be associated with this, if you look at your staff report there, we have been looking at the capital needs assessment just to take a look at that and make sure that we're funding sort of, any repairs, maintenance, those, making sure that we're keeping facilities up, taking care of what we have. And so I don't know if we want to include that in this or if we want to just focus solely on those with master plans.
I mean, I just want it's not to diminish the importance of these things, right? But in strategic planning, I always worry about this idea of like, let's have, 20 goals and get none of them done, right? And so, maybe it's for this year, right? We really do focus on whether it's the paving plan or the steady state plan for the water system. Next year, we take on facilities management and stormwater. Right. I frankly, I actually do think the paving and the pipes are the most important, right? Like we should, I think, really prioritize those. And if we say like, oh, we're going to have a work plan associated with the 4 goals equally the same, I don't think we're actually prioritizing.
This year, our number one utility and facility priority should be paving. Is that what you?
Yeah, I mean, I would try to make the case actually for the water system. I think they're really interconnected and we should talk about that. But like, I think if we just say, oh, we're going to look at all of the utilities, all of the steady state plans for all these, like, I do think we should prioritize 1 or 2 for this year and then look at the other 2 the following year. You know what I mean, Jack? Instead of having like all 4 all now, just say, well, actually, we do have limited bandwidth and like, let's direct our attention on whether it's paving or whether it's the steady state for the water system. Like, yeah, sometimes less is more, is what I'm trying to say.
I like that. Why can't it be like, okay, we take a street and we do the paving and the water, and the pipes in it?
Yeah.
Then we're hitting them both. And because again, if we're just paving, we're doing what we always did. We pave, we shake the pipes down below, we have a rupture, we dig up what we paved a month later, right, Kurt? Let's speak up.
Yeah. So now that we do have a steady state water plan, we're able to link the paving with that water plan. And so we know in what year we're going to be replacing a water main. We do a pavement treatment that lasts as long as it until that water main is going to be replaced. So we might do a low cost overlay, just over the street, which it's like a brand new road for the first 5 years or so. But it doesn't last 20 years like a full rebuild. But we're not going to do the full rebuild until we replace the water main. So we can actually pave more streets now, knowing what year we're going to replace the water main, and just line them up. So the life of the pavement is going to coincide with the life of or the replacement time of the water main. So that's kind of the process. They are interlinked. The other one thing I might add to the kind of top priorities is the combined sewer overflow reduction. That's a huge issue. We have sewer, going to the rivers when we have heavy rains. So for me, it's council's decision, obviously, but those would be the top 3: CSO reduction, water main replacement, and street paving.
Can I respond to that? Yeah, I just to ask you, you're talking like up at Wilson and those streets. It's so bad, we need to pave it because we can't wait until we do the water, which is like 7 years down the road, right?
Yes, that's one again.
And I'll agree with you. It is so bad, it really can't wait 7 years. I mean, you go up there and drive those streets like I did. They're some of the worst streets in the city. But what I like about it is we're starting to finally align things, the pipes and the paving together, which we never did in the past. We just paved and it, like I said, we had a rupture within a month or two and we we're digging up our brand new paving. That's what I'm trying to get us away from long term.
Right, and we may have a water break on those streets, and we'll have a patch,
Right.
but still, the road
Right,
will be
but
much
it-
better for that duration until we can get the water main done.
Yeah.
The perception is that we're not doing enough paving, however. I mean, I understand that a lot of paving is tied to, water line and sewer line rebuild. There's also paving that is not tied to that necessarily. Is that correct, or is that an overstatement?
Very expensive compared to paving.
Sure.
It takes a lot more staff time to manage that. So we can't replace the water main on every street we're gonna pave. So we know that we're just gonna be pave over bad water mains, but we're not gonna do what would be the recommended practice for the maximum length of the pavement life. We're gonna do a lower cost that doesn't last as long, knowing that we're gonna come back and dig up the water.
So we could increase the amount of paving that we do each year while also respecting the water paving relationship in the steady state water plan.
Yes, and that is,
Yeah.
the current plan is to, annually increase the paving funding, by, I think it's 200 or 160,000 a year. Remember the exact.
Yeah, I would think that would be an action that we would want to maybe revisit. I mean, I was talking to Sarah about, the 1% on the water tax. I mean, we've had that for 8 or 10 years. Maybe it's time that it's 2%. I don't know. There are things that can be done that we can consider that would actually increase funding in a sort of fair way. Water is based on use. So anyway,
Well, just to get to this, like, I mean, if we were to limit our goal for this year on the steady state plan that looks at exactly what you're talking about, then the action item becomes considering different revenue streams, right? I mean, that's kind of what I'm thinking about too. It's like, yeah, we identify these goals, but they actually have to have action items associated with them that we have something to do with, right? So, and just thinking about that, like, anyway, I would suggest that we limit the goal to the steady state plan that related to water mains and paving, and then the action steps that we take over the course of the year is, considering reviewing it. Is it fast enough? If it's not fast enough, like, what could we do to increase the speed of it? Those are actions that we could actually take.
Adrian. Your priority would be the sewer. Can you just talk a little bit just about that? Because it sounds like that's not what we're got a discrepancy here.
There'd be my three priorities would be, combined sewer overflow reduction is the one that's not currently on the table. So that is what I spoke about last meeting where, during heavy rains, the stormwater system's connected to the sewer pipes. And there's, 6 points remaining where, the pipe, the capacity is exceeded and the combined water or stormwater and sewer is discharged to the river, to the Winooski or the North Branch. So from an environmental perspective, to me, it's really important that we continue to focus on separating out the stormwater so that doesn't happen as much and reduce that.
But you're going to continue that work.
Yep, also going to continue paving and water main replacement, but
Trying to get it all wrapped around in my brain. It's a lot. I mean, it's yeah.
They're all
Yes.
right. It's just, what are we going to spend our time talking about this year? Right.
And also one time for the budget.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Mhm.
Proposed stormwater utility fit in with the CSO issue? Because we've been kind of putting that on the back burner for a few years now. Should we be moving that forward faster?
the CSO separation is in the sewer fund. Now it's in the master plan, and that is the focus for the first, 20 years or so of the master plan. The stormwater utility is really focused primarily on the stormwater infrastructure. So we have a lot of metal pipes that are failing. 3 of the streets we're paving this year and need whole new stormwater systems. It's a way to generate revenue as an enterprise fund, like a water system or sewer system, that would be dedicated specifically to stormwater, but not just infrastructure. It also include treatment, some of the resilience piece, detention, things like that, where people would get a credit if they could slow down the water on their property. And the theory is that the fees would be based on how much impervious, so how much an individual property is contributing to stormwater runoff. But it's separate from the CSO. That's fully funded in the sewer fund currently.
Don't have to advance the stormwater utility at the moment.
Well, it comes back to the competing needs of paving funding is also, it's the same funding that pays for stormwater pipe replacements. And, aside from the water main issues that we have, we're also running into stormwater infrastructure where it's difficult to pave a street. For example, the Blackwell and Taplin and Scribner, there's like literally sinkholes, in the roads from the pipe has just collapsed. And we just go and patch them best we can with fabric and to get it by. But we can't pave those roads until we replace the stormwater. So they are tied as far as funding paving versus stormwater infrastructure, and it would help us kind of have more revenue available to pave more streets.
Kelly, how are we doing?
Really winnowed it down here. We've at least gotten to that point, but we're also at 8:05. I think if we can get general agreement that this is sort of our approach, that everybody kind of likes this, then I think we've accomplished at least getting down to the goal level within this year's plan. And then I think, if you're up for it, with the remaining time, if we could do sort of the exercise, which would be to work on doing sort of the strategies associated with each of the time periods. Does that make sense?
Your council members, are we good with these goals? Just show of hands. Okay, that's
And just to be clear on the infrastructure, we'd be focusing on paving and water lines. Okay. So there'd just be 2 right now. Okay. Yeah, right here. So we had gotten sort of the 3 here. So we had the increase the quantity and quality of affordable housing and childcare, essential for a thriving community, increase the number of local businesses through retention and expansion programs, as well as support startups and entrepreneurship with the goal of increase, and then continue to improve our business and economic climate to encourage and support businesses. Okay, super. So maybe we could take. So I want to be respectful of time. We did say that we were going to go for 2 hours. We got sort of a little bit of a, late start on that 2 hours. So 8:30 wouldn't be exactly 2 hours. We really could probably add about 10 minutes. So what I'd like to maybe propose is that maybe we do 20 minutes and see where we get with strategies. And so the goal here would be for each of you, you all have your sticky notes to then come up with 3 to 5 items that, would support the goals that we've identified. Yes. That's a lot.
3 to 5 items for each goal or each area.
Maybe 3 to 5 total for each area.
We're gonna have both.
Oh, I totally agree. And what I was hoping, if we did it sort of in that way, that we might put them kind of off to the side of each of these and then assign them to each of the items. Yep. And so like maybe some might have the first one, some might have the second, and we just have to see where we ended up. So then we would need to develop those further. So I don't know that we'll get all the way there with the strategies tonight, but perhaps maybe even staff could come back with some suggestions for you to consider.
Out there, maybe we could just focus on one and do it like really well, and then that serves as a model for staff to go back and
That sounds
make
great
the-
too.
You know, like I feel like housing is not the easiest one. Definitely not the easiest one, but I feel like there's a lot of strategies that we've been talking about that we could really identify and put on the map, and then that can serve as like the template for the others.
That would be wonderful.
Totally with that. If we're all three tonight, let's be here till 10:30.
I agreed, just trying to make efficient use of our time.
Let's make housing.
And other ones, probably city staff has very specific implementation strategies. Maybe we can come up at templates with their strategies. Like for economic development, I think the council approved childcare task force, and it's for 12 months. So it's a good, I think. And if it is approved, we will have economic development and growth subcommittee. So that's another strategy. But also we have strategies coming from city plan. So then we can review as a council these two templates based on the housing template. Then if anybody has other strategies as a city council, we can add those. That's all.
Okay, so I
go
think that
housing.
let's do housing, and if everyone wants to start the clock, minutes. Does that sound good for everybody?
About strategy. Mike, would you agree that a major strategy for getting housing is in CCR and Sabins is we need to get the water and sewer to the places we want the houses to go?
Yes, that would be definitely one barrier that we have to overcome is doing that. We have a plan for how to do that, but
Right,
yes,
but
that's
that
one.
would be a very early one, right? I mean, without that, we don't get the housing there, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
That would be like implement our actionable plan would be like, we need the city plan, the tip. Right, so those would be things that,
Well, it would be under increased support for homeowners develop, because that gives them the support. They need that support to get those pipes there.
yep,
The water, sewer, maybe the
Yeah.
power. Otherwise, nothing goes there.
yeah,
That's what Alan told me about
Yep.
Sabins pasture. Without that. So, and also CCR, I think, to get it up the hill is major. So, thank you.
you are.
You're our number one guy. That's why we want you first because that's help to us. Besides, you're not a counselor there. I'm not gonna let them dump on you, right? I recognize you that.
Doing
Doing good.
Thanks for being here.
I see. Yes. Yes. Yeah, that's true.
Do you guys have like, what does your management team meeting look like? Do you, it's department head meetings, what do those look like?
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, that's what they are. Everybody gets in and then what is it? City managers like with you? Just reports out what they're doing?
Yeah. For a while, it wasn't sure picking up my card. I was definitely thought that I would want to. Throughout the city, it wasn't really put on, put that, there wasn't really a column for just down, basically, out. So I was like, I would have liked to have seen a section on down. Right, but some people might think it's a little bit over, like Amazon, big company, yeah, you know what I mean? And I was thinking, I think, no, and that's why I'm thinking downtown is more what we should solve. That's a more immediate concern. And maybe I should, yeah. The community, your problem is too much.
I don't see anyone ready.
When I saw that, I was like, wait, 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 time. I mean, so far.
7 minutes, okay. So I'm just gonna gauge the group here and see where we're at. It seems like everybody is good. Oh, Jim's still on? Okay, we get 7 minutes. Okay.
Start like looking for yeah.
Like the one pen I never lost.
Like, I want my pen back. I am 100% a pen stealer, but this one has been with me for a long time for some reason. I don't know why. And everything stays together. I know, and I just pull it out. It's like so. Everything gets. Yep. I know.
Yeah, I don't think we need a lot of time.
Yeah, next, like 2 months.
Max.
But not, yeah.
Yeah, okay, totally. I don't think it should be too long at all. Yeah.
So. Like regular. Then.
Yeah.
I just want to check it.
We're gonna work
Yeah,
out that.
perfect. Yeah.
It was well done, people did a good job, but,
Great. I've been up there.
look, so many of them are some really good people. You talk to a number of my constituents.
That's your district, yeah. Hi, Brad. Help ourselves. No, they don't. Are you leaving? For what? I don't know. I just got back from Michigan. Well, we dropped in, yeah.
Like Ann Arbor, right? We stay there for a summer.
I like this. It was a whirlwind weekend, but
They're downtown. I don't know.
we were in North Campus. Our Izzy was in North Campus, but we drove around downtown. It was very nice. But Izzy says she definitely does not want to live in the Midwest. Like, this is not for me. Yeah, she's like, this is not.
Very hot.
It was so hard. She's like, I need to live in New England, which is good. Just why, like, you need to go explore different places and figure out what you like and what you don't like. I mean, it's so important. So I'm like, you don't like that.
Yeah.
Like, that's really good information. So. What? Yeah, she's like at University of Michigan for a 2-week technical major program, which is very tough. 8 o'clock in the morning until like 10 o'clock at night for 14 days straight. She's exhausted. She's like, oh my God. I mean, she's exhausted. Yeah. So she's like, she didn't really, she's University of Michigan. It's too big for her, which is so great.
No,
I'm like, that's exactly why I'm sending her to all these places. I'm like, I'm gonna invest money for you to go to college. You better. Yeah, my husband, a lot of money. I'm like,
My father
yeah.
went there. That's why my son used to. Like, I want to go there. My grandfather.
I know, I'm thinking,
Oh my God, it's big. So many used to there.
it's really, she's like, so I think she's there, she's just has to decide now between a major in biology or technology, which are two completely different things. Not something, I actually looked and we're schools again, and I told them, yeah, I have to make a very difficult decision in the next 3 months. I don't know what she's gonna do.
Probably this,
Well,
training helped her.
I think so.
Say, oh, I can go this direction. I feel like, or
Or not.
not what I expected for, so I thought.
I know, it's fast.
I don't wanna be there. I'm like, I'm really happy.
Now I feel
I
like.
know.
Like, I don't wanna be trying to do this again.
The next couple months are gonna be very intense. She finished high school as a junior, so she's going to Norwich next year. She's 17, so her senior year of high school, she'll be a freshman in college. So it's accelerated my whole, I thought I had a whole nother year.
I used to sit in my window. Yeah. In Burlington. My office has a corner made at South Winooski. Yeah. Same. South Winooski. Yeah.
That's what they told me.
We're doing great. Thanks. All right, buddy, we're at time. Okay, so there are a lot of good strategies up here. It's a lot. And just I want to kind of just maybe just gauge the room in terms of just the assumptions. So what we've got up here is these, for the timeline, any of these could apply to any of these goals. Is that right? I just want to make sure we're all good. So any of the items that we put up here for strategies could apply to any of the goals. And so much like what we have with the city plan, it's, you've got your strategies and there are items that are associated with multiple items. So it'll look like that. I just want to make sure that we're good with that kind of approach.
And I also put the same numbers on my post-it. So if it makes sense, I try to divide them among the goals.
Perfect. So I was also in realizing this and just thinking about it in sort of a grid format, like I had kind of, like if I would have probably tried to take each of them and put like a thing associated, just because, you know, that's how I would have, just how my brain was thinking about it. But I also, the way that this is constructed too is good. And I do think that we can really work with this to then mirror what's in the city plan, and knowing that, you know, with Palin and what she's got up there, that how she looked at that. We did see a couple that were duplicates. So great minds, you know, thinking about the things. So what we'll do next, I think, you know, I could, you know, go through each of these items if you'd like, or what I could do is take them and we'll put them into these buckets and we'll send it out to you. So you can, I thought you might say that. Okay. All right. Yes.
Yes, that all sounds great. But the other point too is like the timeline and the sequencing of different things. Like there are duplicates on there that some people have put for the 0 to 3 and some for the 9 to 12. And so like that's it. I feel like that's a decision point for someone of like when should, so anyway, how that factors in, I think is important.
The end.
City staff tells me, I'm just talking to myself, oh, these strategies are not doable. Let's revise it, or let's move it to like further months. I'm also okay with that. These are my ideas, but you are the experts, so I am open to suggestions to make changes.
Yeah, and I would just say too, like, as we go home and we think about, you know, like daydream about the other ones, that just like the ones that 90% of the ones that I put on there were just pulled from strategies from the city plan that have council action associated with them, right? And so I would say that like we should all really take a close look at the utilities section and the economic development section as we're coming up with a strat, rather than just daydreaming our own. Like there's a great set.
So I think we have some next steps here. So what we also would like to do is complete the exercise with the other two. And so what we'll do is we'll send out a template, probably with some of the items filled out for you. So seeking your input for those items. So we'll probably use the city plan strategy, but we also might use some of the source documentation that we provided today, just to kind of, you know, work it in a little bit more. Bless you. And then, you know, get it squared away so that then you can get a sort of complete start to finish priority with your goal and with your item. And then the other thing that I would like to do is make sure that we do have metrics associated with each of these so that we know how we're doing. So we've got the timeline now, which is awesome. And we've got the clear goals, great, but also making sure that, you know, we can really determine how well is anybody better off. Like we really can actually do what we said we were going to do, or at least gauge where we're at to know, like, if we need more resources or we need, you know, to look at something a different way. I don't know, but at least it gives us more information to make decisions. And I'm really excited about the way this is coming out so that we can use it during the budget process, because I think it will really help. And I think it will really help staff in setting priorities going forward. All the things in the staff document for plans are all happening and they're all important. But we will laser focus on these items. Okay, so we're at time a little bit over, not too bad. But there was a lot. I have a tendency to do that, try to put 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag. So all things considered, I think we're in good shape. Thank you.
Put into preparing for this.
So council members, we have other items on the agenda. I don't know if anyone. Council reports, mayor report, managers report. Dispense with those or do them. Sorry. Okay, we're done. We're adjourned at 8:36 PM. Thank you, everybody.